Hello and welcome back to the Franchise Growth Pod. My name is Belle, Director of Marketing at AC Inc., and we are back with Mr. Brecon Gage. How's it going, Brecon?
I'm doing great, Belle. Thanks so much for having me back.
Oh my gosh, of course. It's actually been so long since we've recorded a whole bunch of podcast episodes. As any podcaster knows, batching is such a helpful tool. So we have kind of, a week at a time where we do so many episodes. And it's been a few weeks and I'm feeling a bit rusty. I feel like I'm gonna need to remember how we do this.
Well, I suspect it'll come back pretty quick, Belle. I've seen
I'm
you.
sure.
I've seen you do a few of these. I'm not too worried.
I'm sure it'll be like riding a bike or something.
I
Um,
would fall off the bike, so I'm glad it's you.
do you remember being taught to ride a bike? Like, do you have any strong memories of that?
No, I do remember trying to teach my daughters how to ride a bike.
Aw, did they learn
Yes.
pretty quick? Were they pretty?
No.
Okay.
No. It was epic.
That's so funny.
Epic dad fail.
Oh no, was there a lot
Yes.
of falling?
Oh yeah, there were falls and tears. We actually ended up using same to like this bike camp here in town, and it was amazing. And
Wait, I've actually
by the end of the first day, they were ride bikes fine.
I've
So
actually seen that bike camp because
yeah.
so Brecon, one of our amazing franchise growth advisors, if anyone is new to the podcast and is listening, Brecon and I used to live in the same place in the same city, and I've seen that exact bike camp that you're talking about, and it looks phenomenal. Like I'm so impressed, and
Yeah,
the
they
kids
they
are
they run
so good.
a good operation. It was you should have seen like they came back after day one riding their bikes, and I'm like, I am the worst dad ever. It was so
Oh,
funny.
everyone has different learning styles.
My wife and I just about died laughing. It was so funny.
Well, I remember, so I am one of six girls. I have five sisters. And I remember we used to live in a house when I was a little kid that had a really long driveway that was like just at like a hill. Like it was just a
Oh wow.
gravel hill. And so that was of course what we had to like, and we didn't lived on kind of a busier road, like around the corner. And so we couldn't really like learn to ride on the road. So we ended up learning to ride on this gravel hill. And when we talk about wipeouts and having some intense experiences. And then, of course, all the younger siblings are wanting to learn as well. And so we're trying to like figure that out because they're definitely like can't actually ride yet. It was pretty funny, but I have very strong memories of that hill and just like gravel. Like when you fall on gravel, it's the worst thing ever.
Oh, it just kind of shreds you a bit, and I know that's
Oh,
no fun. That's
no.
yeah. It's good that you got over it though. That's
You
good.
learn pretty fast though, because you're wanting to avoid falling like
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
So funny. Yeah. I miss having a bike around here. Do you guys, I know you run a lot and like are outside a lot, obviously around the lake and stuff, but do you guys bike as a family or anything?
Not much, no, honestly. My wife doesn't mind it and the kids don't mind it, but I hate to admit it, but I'm on my Peloton bike quite a bit.
Oh, I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't mind that. I miss my bike. I used to have one and we tried to rebuild it and it did not get fully rebuilt before we moved. So we did not take
Oh,
it with us. And I do miss it. I'm excited to get back into it. I feel like there's lots of paths around here. Anyways, I do not have a great segue. We're talking about biking. We are going to be talking about franchise field coaching today, which I'm so excited to get into with you here, Brecken. So this episode is for anyone who's maybe been seeing a bunch of the AC content or has been kind of hearing and maybe events and stuff, we have a bunch of really exciting workshops coming up at some really awesome franchise industry events. So if you're coming from there, welcome. We're so happy to have you. But this episode is really just focusing. I'm going to ask you a few questions, Brecken, about really the premise of what is a field coach, like what do they do? If you have someone already in that role, how can you kind of tell if they're filling that effectively? Are they covering all the things that kind of we think of as being an effective support in that role? So I want to like start off though with maybe setting the stage on franchisee support in general,
mhm.
because I think that's what probably people are hearing a lot about is the more modern ways of supporting franchisees for success. Franchisees are of course like happy, successful, profitable franchisees are of course the kind of key to system growth over time. So when we're talking about support, that covers a lot of things. So maybe I'll let you kind of set the stage with what that covers before we dive into what that role really is within that structure.
Yeah, no, that's a great place to start actually. So I would say there are two main categories, I would say, when it comes to support. One is what we would call your operational support, training, initial training, onboarding, maybe you have a ticketing system. Basically, when they call in and need help,
Yeah.
what do I do? Things like ops manuals,
Mhm.
anything that helps them operate their business,
Yeah.
right? And that traditionally has been in franchising forever, right? Like that is kind of um, the baseline, and it is absolutely a requirement. You got to train your franchisees how to run the business operationally, and then support them and help them get better within those things.
For
So
sure.
that's kind of category one. The second one, and what we're seeing, um, certainly a big growth in this area, and this is obviously where AC Inc. kind of specializes,
Mm.
is what we call proactive support. And what we're trying to do with proactive support typically is help franchisees better understand the actual, like the business side of running a franchise.
Yeah.
So you're talking about things like strategic growth coaching, metrics and KPIs. How do you read their P&Ls?
Mm.
Staffing and leadership training, those kinds of things, how to build a team. And that is called proactive support. And what you're really doing is helping the franchisee improve their ability as a business owner, not just how to operate the business. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, yeah. And I think so it makes sense that obviously you'd have the more reactive or the operational one in place first because
Yes.
that's like as you're getting started as a business, but then as we definitely see it happen a lot at around 25, 30, 35 units. That's where a lot of the time people start going, we're seeing a need for someone to actually come in and do more of this proactive approach. So actually helping owners set long-term goals, figure out how they're going to get there, right? And then also that helps them, exit better and stuff. I'm imagining it would also help with things like, satisfaction with the company and all of that kind of stuff, like validation and all those other things. So that does make sense. The two types of support. So I guess the question that we do often hear and might be just something to clarify is like the role that does that proactive support
Mm.
field coach is what we call it. Maybe actually you want to start with why do we call it the field coach? Because I know we've had a few people kind of bring that up and like, does it always have to be called that? Like what?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there are lots of different names we see out there. We see uh, compliance manager, we see area managers, we see operational manager, we see, a lot of it for some reason uses the term manager. And honestly, I think from a franchisee perspective, that is usually a bit of a backhanded support compliment or whatever you want to term it. They don't like being managed, right? And understandably, they're running their own business. So one of the reasons we do like coaching is it is coaching.
Hmm,
Um, one of the we talk about all the time at AC Inc. Like our job is to help guide franchisees as franchisors, but we're basically teaching them to fish. We're not giving them a fish. We
yeah,
want to teach them, and so a lot of that is coaching, right? Helping them develop their own skill sets, whether it is strategic growth coaching, goal setting, what have you. But you got to be coaching, and it is in the field. You are out there with them, right? You are not doing it from corporate office and have no idea what's going on. Like your field coach should know what it's like to be in the field in the field
yeah,
with your field.
like more integrated, I guess, with your franchisees as opposed to, and just to be clear, just to clarify too, it often is done virtually.
It
Um,
is.
I think,
But you've been in the field typically, and you understand what it's like to be in the field. Your
yeah,
field coaches, like they have some experience, hopefully, of running a business or being a franchisee or in coaching or whatever. Like there's a variety of ways they could have got that, but they
yeah,
have been in
yeah,
the
yeah.
field in some way, shape, or form.
Yes, totally. So you're coming at it with that perspective. So one thing I was going to say, and so Angela and I actually had a really interesting chat a couple weeks ago about that and kind of what we call that role. And so she was, getting even deeper into, of course, why we call it the field coach, which you did awesome explaining there. And I think that covers the kind of overall term for it. But we often see people and yeah, using manager is always a bit of a tricky one because if I
Yeah.
invest in business and become my own business owner as a franchisee, I don't want to manage. That's not, what I'm here for. But
No.
getting a business coach, like being provided with a business coach to strategically help you is so different. We often have actually seen success coach or franchisee business coach or
Growth coach.
growth coach. Oh yeah, I loved that one. Yeah, Angela mentioned that one too. So those are definitely some great ones in terms of what we call it for in your system. But that a field coach and all of those other terms, those are actually the same thing. It's all the same.
Yeah.
It's just that people either call them something else. We really do not recommend manager in any way, shape, or form.
No, we do
Auditor,
not.
compliance or any of those words. Let's stay away. And really thinking about how we can provide like the most value to franchisees. And I think
Yeah.
framing it in that way helps so much.
And coach, people understand the term coach, whether they played sports or anything, they understand, like Tiger Woods and Michael
Yeah.
Jordan and LeBron James and Wayne Gretzky all had coaches,
Yeah. And still do.
right?
Even the
And
best
still,
coaches still like, yeah,
right, like we all have coaches. I still have a coach. I mean, we all still, it's, and I am a coach. Like there's
yeah,
always people who can give you a different perspective. Um,
totally.
and coaching with adults, it's obviously different than children. Um,
Obviously.
but it's helping act as a second pair of eyes and giving perspective and asking questions, and it's not telling.
Totally, and being a sounding board and all those
Yes.
awesome things. Yeah, yeah, completely. So, okay, so we've talked a little about kind of what this role is called, the different types of support and where they fit into that. So they fit into that progressive
Mhm.
space. And then, it can be called a bunch of different things. We like to kind of use more coach growth, success, support, all those things, as opposed to
Yes.
manager, compliance, all those things. Um, I want to get into kind of what they do or what their role is within the system. Because I think that's where some people even might have people on their home office team doing some of these
Mhm.
tasks. So I think getting into your head kind of what they do will really help you understand who on your team is maybe taking that on currently. Is there someone else that could be supporting? Is there a need to bring in someone completely new? So maybe you want to go through and you help, fractional field coach for lots of brands. So you actually are a field coach for lots of
Yep.
we work with, and you also Jen on our team helps people like hire coaches. So we really integrated into that coach, either getting new ones on board or doing it ourselves. So we have definitely that background to back this up for sure.
Yeah, it is, what does a coach do? Gosh, what we typically see is, as franchise systems grow and they are providing, the operational support, is as they get up to that 20 to 30 piece range, they
Yeah.
start realizing that, A, oh my gosh, we're always putting out fires.
Mm,
Um, is this scalable as we grow into the 50, 60, 100 units piece? How can we get our franchisees to be more self-sufficient, right? And that is exactly what a proactive coach does. So your coach comes in and we start teaching things like goal setting and strategic growth coaching. And when we talk about strategic growth coaching, what we're really saying is we figure out how to set goals and then where do we want to go? Like what is the franchisee's vision? How to analyze where they are now. So your franchisee coach should be doing things like SWOT analysis and KPI analysis and staffing evaluation, helping with staff, teaching these things, I should say, as opposed to doing them. We figure out where the franchisee is, where they want to go, and then you map out how to get there. And
mm,
you reverse engineer it and you do all these, chunk it down into baby steps. Um, and I know that's been spoken about on other podcasts here, but really what your coach is doing is teaching the franchisees how to become better business people
yeah.
and develop their own skills, whether it's leadership, staffing, how to build, a strong culture within their business, but
Yeah.
also how to look at their numbers, how to analyze a P&L, how to look at metrics and dashboards and all those things. And so your coach from the franchisor's perspective needs to have, these really strong people skills,
Mhm,
really good listening skills, be very analytical.
mm,
Um, and not everybody has that already within their existing team. And
yeah.
so because it is about relationships and building and understanding that you are there to support the franchisee, not tell them what to do.
Mm,
And so again, I think a lot of franchisors struggle with finding that person within their existing team. And
yeah.
often it is an outside person that has to come in and you just got to teach them how to run, the operational side, but they can learn that.
Yeah.
But if they don't have the people skills and the ability to read people and see how they're feeling and helping them with even mindset, I mean, that is such a big piece. Like it's it is constantly evolving though. You have to be able to adapt to your franchisees. And so it is hard for franchisors to look at their team and identify who on our team is going to be able to handle that, all those components.
Yeah.
It's for everybody.
So many good points were just made, Brecon. And I was trying to kind of keep in mind two things came up, maybe three, we'll see. When you were talking that I think I'm just trying to think, what other questions might be coming up as someone's listening to
Mm,
this. I'm thinking about, okay, who is doing this in my system right now? And I would say, who is meeting with your franchisees or who is interacting regularly with your franchisees to work on things like goals, understanding metrics, understanding their numbers. Who is doing that role is probably going to be a good place to start of looking at kind of who might, without even knowing it, be kind of doing some of those tasks. And then that's a great spot to start analyzing, is that person the right person to be doing this? Or are tons of people doing this and we don't actually have a strategy in place for how they're doing it, right? Like I know I talk to marketers on teams all the time, and oftentimes home office marketing teams will end up doing things like looking at goals and helping with metrics and stuff without even necessarily meaning to, because they are just helping with things like ad spend and tracking orders and all those
Right.
things, right? So I think who is meeting regularly with your franchisees or who is helping with some of the tasks that Brecon just mentioned, it's probably a good place to start of thinking, okay, are there people already doing this task? Are they really the right person to be doing that? Do we need to be looking at doing this a different way? So I think that's a really good spot to start there. So I wanted to mention that because I really liked what you said about that piece. The only other thing I was going to say, so I guess it's just two. Only other thing was the value of the people skills and the not telling, but instead like teaching or training, or educating or supporting. I think one thing to keep in mind is also the power of someone doing that and connecting, because let's be real, a lot of times franchisors struggle with the compliance piece, right? So if a franchisee has their own goals and their own vision, that's awesome. We want that. We want a franchisee to have their own vision for their business growth, their business trajectory, in terms of how much money they want to make and all these kinds of. It's great, right? What it's going to connect with to their own life. Do they want to go on holidays? Do they want to exit successfully in 10 years? Whatever that looks like for them, right? We want them to have their own individual goals for that. But if a franchisee is not being compliant and the coach is just supporting them and not, bringing them back to the focus of like following certain systems or operations or whatever, I think something you mentioned that is worth highlighting is the power of the coaching instead of the telling, is that you actually can help create more of an understanding that following some of these systems, or maybe they're popping random logos places or something like that, but coaches can kind of help connect why some of those actions are hurting the business or aren't helping them achieve the goals they're going after. And that is going to get you the result you're looking for without just doing the same thing over and over. So just telling your franchisee to do it. And instead it's like the connecting of what they want and then what home office team want and what ultimately everyone wants, because everyone using the brand guide properly or following the right ops procedures and stuff, it's going to help the whole business. But I think that piece of the coaching versus telling is really, really important, because from a franchisor perspective, that'll also help understand like why having the right person in that role has such an incredible impact, right? Is it's not doing the same thing. It's actually taking a different approach to get the desired result.
Yeah, you make a really good point there, Bill. I mean, one of the things we often hear too is that the franchisees, after a while, like it's almost like kids, they just tune out mom and dad. They just stop listening to the franchisors because it's mom and dad, and they're like, oh my gosh, you know, it's almost similar to that kind of
Mm,
situation sometimes. Whereas if your coach is coming in and we're talking compliance, whether it's ads, and you're like, okay, let's talk about this. I'm interested. I understand, like, you think your ad's great and that's amazing. Okay, let's talk about what happens if everybody starts posting their own ads.
mm,
How will that impact the brand? And we're just asking questions,
yeah.
right? But then they can start answering. They're like, oh, that. So if Jimmy down the road starts posting his own ads, they're not going to look like mine, are they?
Mm,
No. Okay, what if we now have 30 different kinds of ads out there? How is that going to impact the branding that we're trying to build?
mm,
Oh dear. Right. And so you're helping them come to their own realizations. Um, and even then you can say, look, your ad's great. Let me take it back to creative and let marketing, and let's
totally.
see if there's anything that we can add into our current branding. Like
Mm,
there's ways to direct that conversation, and also the relationship piece. Like if you have established a relationship with them as the coach and that you are there to support them and they understand you are in their corner, when it's time to have a tough conversation and you got to put on your coaching hat and say, look, Jimmy or Sally or whoever it is. And I always use those names. I don't know
you
why.
do. You're like an old math textbook.
Like Jimmy, and I'm sure Jimmy's awesome, but Jimmy, I got to tell you something, and I'm going to tell you with respect and with kindness, but I am concerned, and here's why,
Yeah.
right? And now you're able to have that conversation, and it goes over so much better than someone just saying, Jimmy, you're not being compliant, change your ads.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
So true. Yeah, it's taking a different approach to get the goal outcome, and it is so powerful when it's put in place effectively, and you have that trust building, the relationship building, and then actually one other thing maybe I will mention is the franchisee aspect. I think a lot of people think, okay, perfect. I have, a past franchisee or maybe an existing franchisee who could do this and who could do this really well. And I know, I feel like if that has been done, a couple times where a franchisee will kind of mentor or coach other franchisees. But I feel like when we hear a lot of times, people around 20 units go, well, I have, a franchisee who would be amazing at this. But then, and this is again where it goes back to what is this role really trying to do? What are the things they need to be taking on? That it's a balance. They shouldn't actually be just team franchisee either, because they might go, yeah, just do that. Like it's working for you, right? You don't want that. You actually do want this more like, again, you talked about it so well earlier about the outside perspective, right? This third perspective that's looking at a whole, looking at the whole brand, the whole system, everyone's success, but still has a very close relationship and cares deeply about the success of the franchisee. So it's almost like you need this balanced perspective, and that can be tough when a system just goes, oh, we'll have a franchisee who could just do it for everyone else, and we'll add, and that can get, I feel like, messy. Maybe it can be done well.
It can work really well. I mean, I'm a ex-franchisee twice over, so I like to think I'm a decent coach. But even, there are mentoring programs within it, but it is, yeah, and also if they're still operating their own franchise,
that's more what I meant, to be clear.
it can get clunky, and they may not have all the business skills that they need to teach as well, or they may be great operational, but they don't understand the proactive piece, right? So it can be beneficial for sure, but it can get a bit murkier, I would say.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I meant when they are still working with it, like still a franchisee existing. And yeah, I think mentorship is different than the coaching in that way as well, because I know a lot of group mentorship has been incredibly successful within systems with existing franchisees. I was more meaning an existing one, and then being like, and you can also be hired by corporate. And I do think that can be often
it blurs the lines a bit.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because obviously it's the same thing we talk about a lot. Is it's very situational, but it is one of those things we kind of caution against or really analyze to make sure that it's going to work effectively.
Yeah, my last brand, I didn't become one of the coaches until I'd sold, and then once I'd sold, I was brought back in to work with him as the coach.
Yeah, and I think that's a very different perspective to have for sure. This has been I wish we could just keep talking about this topic forever, Brecon. I feel like we have so much to say, but we'll have to do another episode, of course.
Sounds good to me, though.
This has been so awesome. I just want to say that if anyone is interested in learning more about implementing field coaching, or even getting someone like Brecon on our team to step in and kind of help do some field coaching in the interim while you're working on hiring and training the right person, come talk to us. This is literally our expertise, our specialty, and we absolutely adore helping brands get this in place, especially early. Helps so much with the growth and the scaling and just making sure it's done effectively initially. So you can get all the information angelacote.com/contact, and you can actually just fill in the form and directly connect with our team, get and learn all the details that way. So thanks again, Brecon, for being on the pod. And
thanks for having me, Belle.
Oh, and go be awesome, everyone.